ladies and gentlemen, if you felt like politics was unusually loud this week, relax, you're not imagining things. Today on the show, ODM is fighting itself, governors are fighting senators, leaders are making U-turns so fast they need hazard lights. Zimbabwe, on the other hand, is rewriting the constitution like it's homework. And somewhere in Nairobi, 3 trillion shillings have simply gone for a walk. So yes, it's been one of those weeks, the kind where you wake up to go to work, check the news, and immediately consider going back to bed because what's the point? Folks, welcome to Hold My Mic, where we take the chaos, add facts, and just a little common sense. My name is Willis Raburu. Drop the beat!
Hold my mic. Hold my mic. Hold my mic. Yeah, yo, hold my mic. Hey, hold my mic. Hold my mic. Hey, hold my mic. Hold my mic.
Good evening. So this week in what can only be described as democracy meets Kenya Sevens rugby, a man decided that the best way to meet the president was to attempt a full Olympic Omanyala sprint towards the podium.
Mimi nataka niseme kwa watu wa Wajia, vijana ya Wajia, asanteni. Hey! Pole. Wachana yeye. Wacha relax hapo, waketi hapo.
Yes, not a handshake, not a wave, not even a strongly worded letter. No, within seconds, and I mean seconds, security responded. The man was spear tackled with such precision that somewhere in the distance, I'm sure Kenya Sevens rugby coach shed a single tear of pride. The security team acted so fast, you'd think it was Mandamano, only that this time their faces were not covered. Now, here is the best part. After being folded like a campaign poster after elections, this man reportedly said he was an MCA aspirant and he just wanted to greet the president.
Yeah, asanteni. Hey! Pole. Wachana yeye. Wacha relax hapo, waketi hapo. Keti hapo tu chini. Takutana na wewe, keti hapo. So,
now sir, kuja tuongee. You don't need to greet the president at full sprint. That is not even what we call a greeting. So, Mr. MCA aspirant, what was the plan with that speed? That is the actions. That is an action sequence. Did you want to do a diving handshake, a flying hug, a surprise manifesto presentation mid-air? If that's how he campaigns, imagine how his rally entrances will be. But honestly, security deserves an award. They reacted so fast, I'm convinced they sensed disturbance in the political force. Now, yes, it's funny, it's even absurd, it's peak aspirant energy, but let this be serious, and let's be serious for a second. Security at the presidential events cannot operate on the assumption that everybody running forward is just enthusiastic about the handshake optics or nyota or anything. We live in a time where threats are real, buffer zones matter, controlled movement also matters, and screening matters. Because today it was I just wanted to greet him. Tomorrow it could be something much darker or even heavier than a shoe. And we cannot rely on the elite level rugby instincts as the first and only line of defense. So, to the aspiring MCA, sir, if you want to greet the president, here are acceptable speeds. Number 1, walking. Number 2, standing. Number 3, existing calmly. Number 4, make fun of him online. Anything above brisk enthusiasm is considered suspicious cardio. Democracy is not a 100-meter dash, and greetings do not require such velocity. Now, don't take this "I am running for MCA" literally. For the rest of you, I know what you're thinking. Lakini, sisemi, mimi siongei. All right, folks, there's only one major headline that matters in the political circles this week, the leadership surgery that we witnessed at the Orange Democratic Movement Party. Now, after months of mumblings and rumblings, whispers, questions, and rumors, the ODM National Executive Committee, or NEC if you like, finally acted, and not in a subtle manner. They removed Nairobi Senator Edwin Sifuna Atawatafuna from his position as ODM Secretary General with immediate effect.
Having deliberated on matters relating to the conduct of the Secretary General, Senator Edwin Sifuna, the NEC resolved to remove him from office with immediate effect in accordance with the party constitution and applicable laws. Effectively, the Deputy Secretary General, Honorable me, yours truly, Catherine Omanyo, will act in this position until a substantive holder of the position is elected.
Now, this isn't just a job title change. The Secretary General is actually the heart of the party's communication and organizational control. He or she now, allegedly, is the person tasked with structuring the party's strategy, messaging, and coordination. Now, NEC said that the decision to remove Sifuna was because of indiscipline and concern over his conduct. In simpler terms, well, they believe Sifuna went off script. There were too many independent speeches, too many parallel rallies, and too many public disagreements with the rest of the leadership. But a few things prior to this decision tell that story almost too well. First, calls for Sifuna's removal weren't brand new. Migori Senator Eddie Okech had even filed a petition earlier this year seeking his suspension and possible de-whipping, accusing him of misconduct and indiscipline. Basically being a politician. That motion was later withdrawn, but it showed that the appetite for action was there. Now, secondly, Sifuna's refusal to back down on key issues like opposing ODM's cooperation with the government and questioning strategic deals sparked internal tensions. Analysts say he represented a faction that wanted a firmer opposition identity. And thirdly, despite being the Secretary General, he wasn't even at the NEC meeting where his fate was decided. Sifuna was at Senate, doing the job he was elected to do as the crucial session that delivered his dismissal was being held. So, let's pause here for a quick reality check. This is a warning shot fired by the Oburu Odinga faction and the party establishment saying, independent thinkers kitu gani? Toe the line. I'm here because I'm still representing my brother and he would not have wanted this. Na tutaendelea tu. But Sifuna, he hasn't exactly been alone in this trouble. He has been seen as a leader of a rebellious wing in the party, a wing of younger politicians openly challenging the party positions and leadership, murmuring about secret deals known but unnamed people, and pushing alternative narratives on everything from government cooperation to election strategy. Names like Raila Odinga's daughter, Winnie Odinga, and MPs Babu Owino, Caleb Amisi, as well as Karoli Omondi have all been mentioned alongside this restive camp. Now, some already even purged from internal party structures before the decision to remove Sifuna was announced. MP Caleb Amisi, the party's deputy organizing secretary, was apparently sent a WhatsApp message informing him of his removal from the National Executive Committee early on. I doubt it had that read more option. It probably read like those old telegrams. Caleb, full stop. NEC, full stop. You are out, full stop.
Was removed as the deputy organizing secretary via a WhatsApp message. You know very well that our party constitution, to remove a NEC member, it must be a resolution of the NEC. I was removed even before the NEC met.
Now, this week's developments aren't isolated. They are consistent with a crackdown on elements perceived to be straying from the official ODM line. So where does this leave the party? Here are the big questions that everyone from ODM members to the voters are now asking. Number one, is this the end of internal democracy within ODM? Is the D in ODM active? Because Sifuna's removal seems almost too theatrical. It looks like just a crackdown on voices questioning leadership strategy rather than a measured resolution of disagreement. Number two, is Sifuna done politically? He has already said he will not accept this decision quietly because a day after he was removed, he called a presser to say that he will challenge the move in court. Now, according to Sifuna, procedures for his removal weren't followed to the letter of the party's constitution, and he was never even read his wrongs nor given a chance to respond before the vote as the party rules require.
My only crime is that I have refused and I oppose any plans and schemes within the party to support President William Ruto's re-election because I have held and continue to hold the firm position that this country cannot afford another 5 years of this expensive, divisive, incompetent and disastrous Ruto misadventure.
Number three, does this decision strengthen Oburu Odinga's faction within ODM? Well, this purge consolidates control for the Oburu camp, especially as ODM charts its pre-election coalition strategy, including how it relates to President William Ruto's UDA. But again, what do they want? Because wewe sisi hatutaki kukufukuza, mimi na rafiki yetu.
Lakini deputy president, usifikiria ya kwamba tunataka kiti yako, tunataka kukufukuza. Please, you are our friend, but as we negotiate, we are going to negotiate what our people deserve.
Number 4, and most importantly, does this decision deepen the generational divide? Very likely, because the public narrative now looks like it's old guard versus the young guard, and whichever side wins could define ODM's identity in the lead-up to the 2027 elections. And if you ask me, the decision to remove Sifuna wasn't made in the interest of the party housekeeping. This was pure internal warfare. And now there are whispers online. Yes, the internet side of Nairobi News calls this a takeover and a signal that ODM risks splitting completely. Some folks even went as far as saying the party's cohesion is finished. The hashtag Rest in Peace ODM trended that entire day. But let's be clear, this story isn't over. It's entering chapter 2, because in politics, every exit creates an entrance. So let me ask you this. When a party's secretary general gets the boot, when loyal lieutenants are shown the gate, and when the party's strategic narrative is rewritten in public, is that discipline or is it desperation? You tell me. Side note, the next time you're getting a replacement, at least try to get the names of things right. Constitutionalism.
ODM's commitment to democratic governance, constitutionalism, social justice.
Now, moving on, this past week something unusual happened. County governors collectively announced that they would no longer appear before the Senate's County Public Accounts Committee, or CPAC if you like, or any other similar Senate audit sessions until further notice. Now, why, you may ask? Because they accused certain senators on those committees of extortion, intimidation, harassment, and political witch hunts during oversight proceedings.
And whatever evidence governors have, governors will table to him and to his leadership. And we're saying something's got to change in that particular committee.
And the Council of Governors, chaired by Wajir Governor Ahmed Abdullahi, has now publicly named 4 senators they said are notorious for this behavior during oversight hearings. Among them, Homa Bay Senator and the committee chairperson Moses Kajwang, Nandi Senator Samson Cherargei, Taita Taveta Senator Jones Mwaruma, and finally, as if he hasn't had a tough week already, Nairobi Senator Edwin Sifuna. According to governors, these senators repeatedly engaged in what they described as extortion and intimidation, including allegations that some county bosses were asked for money in exchange for favorable treatment. In fact, one governor claimed that he was asked for 9 million Kenyan shillings. Another governor said that after refusing to pay, he was publicly embarrassed during a Senate hearing. So, the governors did what any reasonable political institution does when it's offended. They wrote to Senate Speaker Amason Kingi demanding the removal of the 4 senators from the oversight committees and declared that they would not show up before CPAC until their demands were met. They also asked for an urgent engagement forum with Senate leadership to create clear, transparent, and respectful procedures for such hearings. The Senate didn't take these allegations quietly. I mean, what did they expect? It didn't exactly give them a hug either. Speaker Amason Kingi reminded everyone that the Senate's oversight role is enshrined in the Constitution, written in Articles 96(1) and 96(3), which empower Parliament to oversee national revenue allocated to counties. He also highlighted Article 229, which requires Parliament to consider and dispose of audit reports from the Auditor General within 3 months. A process, he said, isn't optional and can't be paused because someone's feelings got hurt. Now, when it comes to the extortion claims, the Senate challenged the governors to produce actual evidence, not just press statements. Kuongea tu.
You come here with embarrassing records, we will embarrass you. If you come here with embarrassing responses, we will embarrass you. If your audit reports are an embarrassment, indicative of theft, we will not bembeleza you.
If your documents are an embarrassment, you'll be told. You know, this Senate holds the truth like a loaded gun, ready to shoot at any given time.
When we hear statements from the Council of Governors saying they will not appear here because we embarrass them, they embarrass themselves by the things that they are doing with the public resources that they've been given.
So what is really going on? Let me break it down for you. Governors are saying that they are committed to accountability. They just don't want to be bullied extorted, or made to feel like contestants in a political wrestling match. Senators, on the other hand, are saying oversight is a constitutional duty and you don't just get to skip it just because someone raised their voice or asked tough questions. Governors also want specific senators off the committee before they return. But the Senate insists that governors must appear regardless of conditions and that the audit process can't be held hostage. So both sides are waving the Constitution around, just with dramatically different interpretations. But this standoff isn't just about 4 senators or one committee. It touches on deeper issues. First, the issue of devolution versus oversight. Counties control billions of shillings in public funds, and so accountability is very critical. But when oversight feels more like interrogation theater, then friction is almost guaranteed. Secondly, political theater versus constitutional duty. We agree that accountability must be fair, but fairness doesn't mean negotiable. Governors need to be reminded that they can engage in structured dialogue over this matter, but skipping hearings is really not an option. And finally, the small matter of public perception. The governors want to be seen as defenders of county autonomy, but senators see this as a bid to dodge scrutiny. Either way, all that the public gets is noise and headlines. So here's the question I want you to chew on this week. Marinate, ruminate. Is this a principled stand against harassment or a political tactical retreat from accountability? Because in Kenya, where accountability is both a constitutional mandate and a national sport, you can never quite tell which one it is until the evidence hits the table, not just the press release. And until someone actually shows that evidence, this showdown between governors and senators will remain less constitutional debate and more institutional wrestling with microphones. Now, this week delivered not one but 2 spectacular political U-turns. Both came from heavy hitters and both raised exactly the kind of questions you'd ask when someone says, "Trust me," right before they do something completely untrustworthy. Let me tell you something.
Hey, let me tell you something. All right. Let me tell you something. Wait.
Let's start with President William Ruto. In July 2024, President Ruto was sharply critical of the Ford Foundation, an American philanthropic organization. His government publicly accused the foundation of helping to fuel protests against the government. Protests that erupted around the finance bill and forced national debate. In fact, Ruto's administration literally listed NGOs linked to the Ford Foundation funds as among groups accused of enabling anarchy. Remember this?
We have no use for anarchy and violence and destruction of property and loss of life. Wale ambao wanasponsor hiyo violence, sisi tunawajua. And I want to call out those who are behind the anarchy in Kenya, those who are behind the sponsoring the chaos in the Republic of Kenya. Shame on them, because they are sponsoring violence against our democratic nation. Mimi nataka niulize watu wa Ford Foundation, watuambie hiyo pesa wanatoa ifanye fujo ndio wapate faida gani?
2 years later, and boom, the president is now reading from a separate script. This very week, the cabinet approved the Ford Foundation to set up formal offices in Kenya. Yes, the same organization that the government once publicly accused of fueling violence and mayhem now has an official approval to open up shop on our soil. The government went from shame on you to welcome to Nairobi faster than it took Ronald Karori to deny the existence of that video. And you know exactly what I'm talking about. Girl.
What's going around is apparently there are videos which I'm scared if they come out or whatever. So what I'm going to do, instead of you extorting me, I'll give you money to share this video on your platform. I'm giving you up to end of day today to 7:05 p.m. Share this video, see what it will entertain all of us. The money I have here for you is 10 million shillings.
So which is which? What is what? When the president accuses the Ford Foundation of provoking protests and then turns around and welcomes them to operate its own office in Kenya, the message that sends is that allegations expire at the border of political convenience. And now, let's talk about Oburu Odinga, the acting, and yes, I say the acting, leader of the Orange Democratic Movement Party, whose own directional shift have political strategists scratching their heads like someone doing advanced Sudoku blindfolded. Now, just a few days ago in Kisumu, Oburu was very clear. He stood on the podium with Deputy President Abraham KINDIKI seated right behind him and assured him that ODM was not going after his seat as part of coalition talks with the United Democratic Alliance. Oburu even told Kindiki, and I quote, "Usifikirie tunataka kukufukuza, you are our friend. Kindiki, you are our friend."
Lakini Deputy President, usifikirie ya kwamba tunataka kiti yako, tunataka kukufukuza. Please, you are our friend, but as we negotiate, we are going to negotiate what our people deserve.
That sounded like an olive branch dipped in sincerity, but then politics does what it always does, it lies. At an ODM meeting with Mombasa delegates this week, Oburu pivoted significantly. He said that ODM bears no personal animosity towards Professor Kindiki, but that the position of Deputy President remains a public seat which ODM intends to negotiate for in future power-sharing talks.
Tunailenga, hiyo ndo tunalenga.
Huyo Deputy President hatuna nini chuki na yeye kwa binafsi. Yeye binafsi hatuna maneno naye. Lakini hiyo kiti ni kiti ya public. Hiyo kiti ya Deputy President ndio tunalenga sana. Hiyo ndio tunalenga.
So one day, Oburu is telling Kindiki not to worry about his job. And the next day, he says, of course, negotiations include that very job.
Hiyo kiti ya Deputy President ndio tunalenga sana. Hiyo ndio tunalenga.
Now, if you're keeping score like in football, Oburu's position would be declared offside by VAR. So class, what are we really witnessing here? With Ruto and the Ford Foundation, a former enemy is now getting a diplomatic welcome. But with Oburu and Kindiki, a statement of friendship and reassurance quickly became a declaration of war. In both cases, the lesson seems painfully clear. That in Kenyan politics, sometimes your allies one day become your headaches the next.
Na najua tutaendelea kulenga. Tutailenga.
Hiyo kiti ya Deputy President ndio tunalenga sana. Hiyo ndio tunalenga.
All right. Let's now take a political safari across the border to Zimbabwe, where the constitutional amendment process has suddenly become the greatest hits tour of How to Stay in Power 101. This week, Zimbabwe's cabinet approved draft legislation that would let President Emerson remain in office until at least 2030. Yes, you heard that right. Instead of stepping down when his current term ends in 2028, his government wants to change the rules so that presidential terms are no longer 5 years, but 7 years. Future presidents are chosen by parliament instead of by the people. And if all this passes, President Emerson, who is currently 83 years old, could stay in power until 2030. President Emerson, 2030, 83. Now, critics are mad, saying the move indeed alters the democratic framework and that a change like this ought to be subject to a national referendum, not just a parliamentary exercise. One opposition lawyer described the amendments as totally unacceptable and warned that it risks huge instability in the country. I believe even to Africa, the leaders will be watching. Now, this spectacle is not exactly fresh choreography in African politics. Let's be honest, this has become something of a continental sport. Robert Mugabe, who is Zimbabwe's long-term ruler before President Emerson, famously extended his rule for 3 decades using constitutional tweaks, loyalty networks, and political theater. Yoweri Museveni, Ukutu in Uganda, has been in power since 1986 and has overseen multiple constitutional changes, allowing him to stay longer, much to the frustration of voters and regional critics. And in Tanzania and Kenya, similar debates took place over term limits and national leadership tenure. Bwana, please, these people are watching. Zimbabwe, don't do it! Now, the Zimbabwe 2030 draft is just that. It's a draft in parliament. If it passes in both houses, it will go back for presidential assent. But here is where things get interesting. President Emerson's ZANU-PF party holds majorities in parliament, which means that they have a smooth path to approval if they stick together. They most likely will. And this is the same party that has been in power since Zimbabwe's independence in 1980. So here is where things are. Zimbabweans are being asked to consider a future where a president, now 83 years old, could remain in power until his 90s, not because voters said so, not because of direct elections, but because Parliament might decree it. If there were an African President Extended Stay Club, Zimbabwe just got promoted to executive membership, right next to Mr. Yoweri Museveni of Uganda. All right, Kenya, this is the most important part of today's show. So I want you to listen to me very, very keenly and then walk with me. Now, there's something very dangerous about boring documents, right? Audit reports, budget papers, those PDFs nobody reads unless Wi-Fi is down and you're desperate. Because that's where the real crimes hide. Not in movies, in spreadsheets. And this week, I went through one of those deadly sleep-inducing PDFs. It's the People's Audit. It's by the Okoa Chumi campaign. And ladies and gentlemen, if numbers could scream, this report would be on fire. Let me explain. For starters, you know the big dream we are sold about devolution? Money closer to the people, services at the grassroots, power to the counties. You know, beautiful, beautiful poetry. Now, here's the math. Between 2013 and 2024, 3.4 trillion shillings were transferred to counties. 3.4 trillion. That is a Netflix budget right there. And what do citizens get? Delayed salaries, stalled projects, hospitals without medicine. So where did the 3 trillion go? Did it just take a taxi hailing cab? Hold that thought right there. Now let's talk about procurement. By law, 30% of government tenders should go to the youth, women, and persons with disabilities. Nice idea. But do you know what actually went to them? 6%. 6. Not 30, just 6. That's not missing the target. That is shooting the wrong animal entirely. Somebody saw 30% and said, let's remove this zero here and save ourselves some ink. Now let's talk about corruption cases. And this part nearly made me laugh out of my chair. Between 2018 and 2024, 274 high-profile corruption cases were taken to court. But guess how many convictions were achieved? No, really. Take a wild guess. 11. 11. Not 11%, just 11 human beings. That's a conversion rate below 10%. Even Arsenal has better conversion rates. And here's the real insult. Kenya lost 780 billion shillings to corruption. And that's just what could be verified. But actual money recovered was 28.4 billion shillings. So in simple terms, the thieves stole a mansion and we only recovered the doormat. Now, hold my tea as we delve into state corporations. These lovely government companies we pretend are strategic investments. State corporations control an asset base of about 4 trillion Kenyan shillings. 4 trillion, not billion, trillion. And yet, every year they still need bailouts like broke uncles saying, it's just step us up, kidogo. Kidogo on my foot. Now, let me tell you a little about politics. And oh, this one is sweet. According to estimates, running for member of parliament costs 35 million shillings. Governor, over 100 million Kenyan shillings. For a job that pays less than $1 million bob in salary. So naturally, you don't run for leadership, you run for recovery. It's not public service, it is cost recouping, which is why procurement becomes a refund policy. Here's another one that made me want to slap somebody. The report says that the government spends about 17 million shillings a day on hospitality. Hospitality per day, 17 million. Hospitals have no medicine, but hospitality, 5-star. We can't afford HIV drugs, but tea and samosas are thriving. Our priorities look like a wedding budget. And finally, my favorite magic trick, the Talanta Stadium. To build it, the government secured 45 billion Kenya shillings. But do you know the actual amount taxpayers will repay? 145 billion. 145. Excuse me, that's not financing, that's daylight robbery with interest. Borrow 45, payback 145. Even those credit facilities would be shocked. So here's the uncomfortable truth. We don't have a revenue problem. We have a leakage problem, a massive industrial-sized bottomless pocket problem. Money comes in by the trillions and leaves like it has a visa. And then every year they tell you, please tighten your belt. My friend, at this point, we are wearing ropes. And the scariest part, all this was not hidden. It's right there in a PDF waiting for someone bored enough to read, which is why, dear leaders, next time you attempt to steal, at least make it less obvious, because these numbers are not audits, they are crime scenes. All right, so here is a summary. If you're in ODM, duck. If you're a governor, carry receipts. If you're a senator, record everything. If you're a Zimbabwean, read the constitution quickly before it changes. And if you are a taxpayer, my friend, just pray. That was our show for today. My name is Willis Raburu, and this has been Hold My Mic, where we don't invent drama, we just report it and laugh so that we don't cry. Stay blessed.
Hold my mic. Hold my mic. Hold my mic. Yeah, yo, hold my mic. Hey, hold my mic. Hold my mic.